Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, February 27th, 2026. I'm Jake Neer in Detroit, in for Kellen Walker. Today on the show, software continues to be automakers' biggest headache, Ford issues a massive pickup recall, and Stellantis discloses its new CEO's compensation last year. Insert cha-ching sound effect. Plus, Widewale CEO Kyler Owens joins the show to talk about the company's latest look into customer satisfaction at franchise dealerships, what's working, and what's causing customers to look elsewhere for service.
The universal truth across those that win and those that lose from the customer experience perspective, communication is always a top driver, as is the staff.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Software problems continue to plague automakers as they push towards software-defined vehicles. According to J.D. Power's latest dependability study, infotainment remains the least reliable part of vehicles, with persistent issues connecting phones to cars. Even more telling, 58% of owners who received over-the-air updates said they noticed no difference in their vehicle. Only 27% reported improved experience. That's a problem, since automakers are betting OTA updates will become a key revenue source through subscriptions. Jason Norton of J.D. Power says automakers need to make updates more meaningful, or at least explain what's being changed. Speaking of software woes, Ford is recalling 4.3 million pickups and SUVs over a software error that could cause trailer brakes and exterior lights to fail. The recall covers 2021 through 2026 F-150s, along with newer F-250s, Navigators, Expeditions, Mavericks, and some Rangers and E-Transits. The problem happens when towing, the integrated trailer module, can lose communication with the vehicle, cutting out brake and turn signal lights or brake function entirely. Ford says it'll fix it with an over-the-air software update. And Stellantis says CEO Antonio Filosa received almost $6.4 million in total compensation last year after taking over in June 2025. That's more than the company initially projected he'd earn in the first 2 years, at least $4 million annually. His pay could climb to as much as $23 million a year starting in 2028. That includes bonuses. For comparison, former CEO Carlos Tavares, who resigned in December of 2024, earned $14 million in 2025. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all of those stories at autonews.com. BMW's humanoid robots are moving beyond the pilot phase after a successful trial in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Our own Doug Bolduc joins us from the road in Munich after attending an event showcasing BMW's robot capabilities. Doug, welcome to Daily Drive.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate being with you again.
So, much to the chagrin of sci-fi fans and to the delight of manufacturing companies and investors everywhere, the humanoid robot saga continues here. BMW says the figure robots at Spartanburg logged over 1,250 hours, moving more than 90,000 parts over 10 months. What did BMW learn from that trial that makes them confident enough to expand this to Europe? And what are some of the biggest technical hurdles that they still have to overcome?
What was really the light bulb moment for BMW was the fact that the machines learned so quickly. They were anticipating that it was going to take much longer to get to the level that they got to. But then all of a sudden they were like, oh my gosh, it can do that. Then let's have it do this. And what it did was it was working in a very tedious job, holding sheet metal pieces so it's a precision job, but also one that's very, very arduous and kind of a job that you wouldn't really want to do as a human being for an entire day and, God forbid, an entire career.
Very interesting. Now, what about the challenges, the technical hurdles? Are they confident that this is kind of plug and play now, or what are the difficulties?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because they let us use a simulator to try to use some robot hands to do what would be a relatively easy task for you and I, was basically connecting an electronic control unit to a housing. So what would probably take you or me or anyone with working hands just a matter of a few seconds was incredibly difficult because I tried it myself. And so it's not a situation where this is going to just snap your fingers and it will start working. There's an incredible amount of work. But what's very interesting, and one of the real breakthroughs, is that the robots are doing imitation, learning through imitation. So if you stand next to the robot and show it a particular motion, it will learn. And there's also now a move towards the robots watching a video of a particular movement, and then light bulb goes off, they can do it. So it's very, very interesting at how quickly this is going to develop. However, it's not a situation where it's like, this will be happening tomorrow.
Sure. Now, with Tesla, Mercedes, and Hyundai all racing to deploy these humanoids, and Morgan Stanley projecting this could be a $5 trillion market by 2050, again, that's $5 trillion with a T. What do you think is driving this sudden push? Is this about manufacturing flexibility? Are automakers worried about being left behind in the next automation wave? What's the driving force here?
From what I could tell from BMW is the feeling was that we want to find a way to have jobs that are dangerous or repetitive or ergonomically very, very uncomfortable done by a machine. And the machines already do so much within the plant to do the heavy lifting of the entire structure of the car, the welding, and so on and so forth. How can we expand that to other tasks within the plant? And if you ask me, it's a very fine line because of the fact that plant jobs are usually good career jobs. However, a lot of those jobs are very, very difficult and they take a lot out of the individual. So how do you balance that? And they were talking today about, again, using these robots to do the jobs that are dangerous or repetitive or just boring or very, very much demanding, as well as working side by side and or fencing off the robots. So if they're only doing a particular task, like doing something with a battery where it's high voltage and high risk, then it'll be a situation where they'll be doing that and letting other people do other jobs within the plant.
Fascinating stuff, Doug. Thank you so much for joining us from the road in Munich, coming back from that factory. Really appreciate you joining us here on Daily Drive.
Thanks, Jake. Take care and have a great weekend.
Coming up, it's Fixed Ops Friday. Our own Dan Shine talks with Wide Whale CEO Kyler Owens about what dealerships need to know about service communication and customer experience trends. That's next on Daily Drive.
Chinese automakers want to enter the U.S. market, but the path forward is anything but clear. On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, Lei Xing, an independent analyst and co-host of the China, EVs, and More podcast, explains the real obstacles to Chinese vehicles reaching American driveways, including the Commerce Department ban. He also explains why the threat from Chinese automakers might be overblown.
Coming in and getting a foothold is only the beginning, but from there until you establish yourself as a kind of Americanized brand, I think that will take decades.
I'm Molly Boygan. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jake Neer. Reputation management firm Wide Whale recently released its 2026 Voice of the Customer report, detailing the top complaints from millions of Google reviews. Wide Whale CEO Kyler Owens spoke with Automotive News senior retail editor Dan Shine about what customers like and don't like when dealing with the service department.
Kyler, welcome to the Fixed Ops Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan. This is exciting. Appreciate the time.
So they're in Vermont and at Wide Whale HQ. Tell us, the folks again, remind us what Wide Whale is and what it does.
Yeah, so for the last 8+ years, Wide Whale's been doing a good job of really trying to listen to customers, helping dealers to send an invite for reviews across multiple different sites for every transaction that happens at a dealership. And then we have a full team in Vermont that actually responds to, on behalf of dealers, the reviews to make sure that when they respond, it doesn't go into the ether. It's actually somebody there that's responding to them and engaging with them in a conversation. And recently we've added some capabilities, and we've been tracking the customer sentiment across every franchise dealer in the U.S. for the last 3 years. And so with that data, we're able to really do some strong analysis and understanding of customer sentiment trends, benchmarking the industry. And you've probably seen some of our scorecards that are out there where we're benchmarking the industry and calling out things that we're seeing as customer trends or customer feedback trends. And really, Wide Whale is set up to be a strong operational partner to help you understand how you can improve your business and how you can improve that customer experience that's showing up using that data.
I will say, when I first met with you folks at the NADA a year or two ago,
Yep.
Was just really blown away by the kind of the data that you collect, and the voice of the customer reports are, if people haven't seen them, they really ought to go check them out. They're really thorough and just really kind of give some really keen insights into dealerships, and from the variable side and the fixed op side. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
That's it for the automotive nerds around.
Right.
There's so much great data to extract out of that. And there's a bunch of information that, honestly has been sort of blind to a lot of dealers for a long time. And so unlocking this information, unlocking the voice of the customer as a partner to help you build a better and stronger business is really what we're all about.
So let's dive in. I'm going to focus on the service side today, but when you look at kind of some of the service scores and highlights from the report, and what, kind of what stands out to you.
Yeah, so there's a few things. The universal truth across those that win and those that lose from the customer experience perspective, communication is always a top driver, as is the staff, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at those two aspects, a lot of things bubble up into that. And so some of the things that we're seeing across the service drive is when communication is high, we see the rest of the scores. There's sort of rising tide lifts all boats when it comes to communication. And from a staffing perspective, certainly on the sales side, we've seen a lot of turnover. There's a longer retention cycle that's associated with service staff, but turnover really creates a problem with training and professionalism and understanding the process. And so I've talked a lot about the no surprises approach. We see that coming through in the data, that when people are getting a different story from different folks in the service drive, or, when they go to the cashier and check out after they've been waiting and something is different than what they thought, that communication really drives a lot of aspect. The one trend that we've seen as we've tracked over the last few years is that pricing sensitivity is definitely up on the service side. And some of that is driven by, rising parts expenses. Some of that is driven by, folks trying to extract some more revenue out of the service side of the business because, some of the sales have dwindled a little bit. And I know, sitting on the JD Power event that they talked about there being flat sales this year. So I see that persisting. The interesting thing that we're seeing when I talk about communication and staff is communication and expectation setting is something that we've seen come out in verbatims a lot, which is they told me this and then this happened. Those that have really high communication scores and satisfaction, even with some pricing sensitivity, are those that really heavily explain the process and heavily walk through what's going on. So we've been evaluating tools that may help dealers more effectively communicate. We've been trying to discern some cadences that are like the right best practices. And what we do when we delve into the data is we identify the top performing stores and try to triangulate exactly what they're doing to drive those high scores and customer sentiment. And a lot of those are a lot of communication, but really consistent communication.
And you're talking about communication. It's saying this, we should have you done by 3 p.m. And throughout the day, I may be texting the customer, hey, your car's back, in the bay. Hey, your car's going to get this, that. And that's kind of when you talk about communication, that's people expect just to be kept in touch with what's going on with their vehicle and when it may be ready and how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, Dan, the way I've described this, because I have young kids, is the Blues Clues approach, which is say the same thing over and over again lots of times to sort of get to that point. And that is really an effective strategy of over communication is okay. The correct channel for communication, you may get so much spam in your email that you're not checking it, but a text message would be a better preference for you. And there may be some consumers that really want a phone call. And so getting to that point and figuring out what that communication channel is and how to make sure that you're tapping into that, super important. And then, from a staffing perspective, making sure that you have really consistent talk tracks and really consistent approaches to that. The wait time that you brought up a little bit is always the hot topic.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So some of the reviews that we've seen and some of the associations with negative wait time scores is like, hey, my car was done and nobody told me it was done. And I waited for 45 minutes before I could pick that car up and take off. There's another aspect, and we really track loaner car availability and variable transportation, shuttles, Lyft credits, things like that. And that is also a big driver. Like folks are okay waiting on their couch or at their office. They're not huge fans of waiting in the dealership. And so communication of that, if you are going to have a long wait time, delivering that type of experience really helps to drive a higher customer sentiment as a result of that.
And one thing interesting about staff you talked about is that on the service side, compared to the variable or sales side, staffing is a little more steady on the service side, which is typically not, service advisor turnover is, crazy high
Crazy.
and
Always
technician,
has
but it seems, according to your report, it's steadying a little bit.
Yeah, you may look at it as it being stable in relation to sales when you think about some of the challenges that the sales side of the business has had, and the variable ops business has really shifted dramatically, and the longevity of that staff, because there may not be units available, maybe not a desirable brand that they're working for, maybe a really tough environment to sell, and you've got folks that are looking for alternatives. When that happens, the service side has remained pretty consistent. And if you look at some of the service volumes, they're actually up, better than flat, because you've got a lot of people holding on to vehicles longer. So there's more opportunity to make money on that side of the business than ever before. And so it kind of makes sense when you think about that dynamic, right? That the turnover has kind of shifted to new car sales because they're having a tough time of it. Fixed operations because people are holding on to their cars a little bit longer. You think about affordability and the cost of vehicles going up. Folks are making that decision to carry it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years longer. I think the opportunity on the service side and with fixed operations is really, really guarding against defection to third-party shops, right? So you have folks that are drifting out of warranty, hanging on to them, and driving loyalty is really important. And that sort of further leans into the need to understand that customer experience and make sure it's differentiated from those third-party shops.
Before we go, last thing, talk about in the voice of the consumer, what are some key takeaways on the service side that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, so for the voice of the consumer, I'll Blue's Clues it again, like I was talking about, which is consistent communication, expectation setting, and following through and delivering on that. If you're going to miss on a timeline, being really proactive about communicating on that front. Some of the other things that we're looking at is communications can be text message, they can be emails, they can be phone calls, they can also be videos, right? And so we're starting to do some studies right now, and still early days for us to have this around video MPI and how much that drives higher adoption, higher ticket values, higher RO dollar amounts, because people are feeling more comfortable about what they're purchasing. So the one thing I would say is just a really strong communication cadence to help on the fixed side. And that, rolls through all aspects of the data that we're pulling out. And the more creative you can be, the more consistent you can be, the better off you're going to be in driving that good customer experience, which we all know leads to people spending more money and feeling more comfortable with the service that they're getting and having trust in what they're hearing and seeing, because it's the same thing over and over again, and that consistency drives trust.
Yeah. Kyler, great stuff. Really enjoy the conversation. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Great to see you.
You too.
Our own Dan Shine spoke with Kyler Owens, CEO of Wide Whale. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jake Neer, in for Kellen Walker. Thanks to our own Doug Bolduc and Molly Boygan for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on software quality, humanoid robots, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our Weekend Drive edition of the show. Our own Larry Velaquette and Michael Martinez talk about the week's biggest news stories, including a big loss for Stellantis, leading to UAW workers getting exactly zilch in profit-sharing checks.
Not everybody wanted EVs, not nearly to the extent that Stellantis and Ford and GM and everybody else thought they would. And who was pushing investment in electric vehicles? The Biden administration. You can't deny that. Just as you can't deny that the Trump administration's tariffs have significantly hurt businesses by adding a lot of extra costs.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.